At my wedding with Matthew, my sister declared that she had been reborn. She ran onto the stage, tears streaming down her face, and threw herself into Matthew's arms. "The person who truly loves me the most is you. Don't marry my sister, I don't want to lose you again." With just one sentence, Matthew called off our wedding. "Harper, we'll talk about the wedding later." I removed my veil and placed it on my sister's head. "There won't be a later. The mood's already set, why don't you two just get married today?" When it was time for the vows, the officiant asked, "Mr. Matthew, do you take Miss Harper as your lawfully wedded wife? To love her, to be faithful to her, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Matthew's eyes scanned the crowd, as if searching for someone. But apparently, he didn't find them. His expression carried a hint of disappointment. "I do." Before he could finish, the chapel doors burst open. It was my older sister, Grace. She had told me she'd be out at sea with her boyfriend and wouldn't make it to the wedding. So why was she here? My heart skipped a beat, a sense of foreboding washed over me. Drenched from head to toe, Grace looked pitiful as she locked eyes with Matthew, the man who was about to become my husband. "I'm sorry, Matthew. I'm late." Right in front of all our guests, she ran onto the stage and into his arms. "It turns out you are the one who loves me most in this world." "I'm sorry, Matthew, I realized it too late." Matthew looked confused at first, but his hands instinctively wrapped around her in response. It was an unconscious reaction. I watched as his expression shifted, from bewilderment to surprise, then to a kind of hidden joy. And finally, he gazed deeply into Grace's eyes. I started to believe her words. The man I had been with for 6 years had loved my sister all along. They clung to each other, oblivious to everyone else, the moment growing more intimate. Their lips were about to meet. I cleared my throat, breaking the moment. "So, are we still having this wedding or not?" Grace finally seemed to notice me standing there in my wedding dress. "Don't marry my sister, okay? I've already lost you once, Matthew. I don't want to lose you again." She started crying, so pitifully that anyone would feel sorry for her. I had spent an entire year planning this wedding. To fit perfectly into my dress and stand by his side, I had spent 6 months working out and dieting. In my heart, I begged Matthew not to humiliate me at a time like this. But after just a moment of hesitation, he still chose to cancel the wedding. "Grace is not in a good state right now. Can we postpone the wedding?" "She's not in a good state, what does that have to do with us getting married?" But I wasn't going to ask him that. At that moment, it felt like something inside me had suddenly been let go. I took off my white veil and placed it on Grace's head. "There won't be a later. The atmosphere's already here. Why don't you two just get married today? I'll make room for you." After I left, the wedding was officially cancelled. When we got home, my father shot me a glare before heading to the balcony to smoke. My mother pointed at my forehead and scolded me. "Do you have any manners? So many guests were there, and you just walked out like that? How do you expect your father and me to face them after this?" Yet the one who ruined my wedding, Grace, faced no blame at all. She had been curled up on the couch playing on her phone ever since we got back. A faint, satisfied smile tugged at her lips. I could guess, she was texting Matthew. I had walked out of that wedding cleanly, but that didn't mean I wasn't hurting. And with the way they were acting, I was even more furious. For the first time in my life, I talked back. "Grace already said she and Matthew are true love. You and Dad always taught me to give in to my sister. How could I dare compete with her for the person she loves?" Grace finally looked up from her phone and met my gaze. "Are you blaming me?" I smiled faintly. "You're overthinking it." Grace rolled her eyes and flopped back onto the couch. "If Matthew loves me, what can I do about it? You were just useless." Yeah, I was useless. But that didn't justify her ruining her own sister's wedding. Everything that happened today was beyond what I could have expected. Grace had always looked down on Matthew, yet suddenly, she was calling it true love. And she kept insisting she had been reborn. I was trying to figure out how to get more information from her. But my mother beat me to it. "What's going on between you and Matthew?" Grace pouted and gave my mom a pitiful look. "Mom, I really was reborn. In my past life, I suffered so much. In the end, even you and Dad stopped loving me. When I was about to die, Matthew came back from overseas just for me. That's when I realized how much he loved me. I could tell from my mom's face that she didn't believe her. But I was starting to. This is ridiculous. I deliberately tried to push for more. You don't believe me? Grace sneered at me. Then she handed me her phone. This was my old number. I stopped using it a while ago, but Matthew never stopped texting me. Harper, whether you believe it or not, Matthew has always loved me. I recognized the phone and the number. It really was Matthew's. I scrolled up, and sure enough, there were years' worth of messages he had sent her. I saw you on the street today. I wanted to say hi, but you were always surrounded by friends. I've liked you for a year now, but you don't even know my name. Are we going to the same high school after middle school? I hope we can still be classmates. Your little sister became my junior. If I can't be your husband, then I'll love you as family. Such a grand, selfless love. If I weren't the victim, I might have even applauded them. But none of that mattered. What mattered was, Matthew and Grace weren't supposed to have gone to the same middle school. He had clearly told me he attended a different one. That night, when I got up to use the bathroom, I noticed that Grace's room was still lit. The door wasn't fully closed. Light spilled through the gap, casting a sliver of glow onto my feet. I was about to leave when I heard my mother's voice coming from inside. After everything you did today, what if Lucas finds out? Lucas, Grace's current boyfriend. He was wealthy, and my parents had always been pleased with the idea of him as their future son-in-law. Compared to Lucas, Matthew was utterly unremarkable. His family was average, his career unexceptional. That's why my parents had initially disapproved of my engagement to him. It was only after my repeated insistence that they reluctantly agreed. Lucas has everything. Matthew is nothing compared to him. Are you as blind as your sister? I knew my mother never liked Matthew. That much had always been clear. I waited at the door for Grace's response. Because I was curious, too. If it was just about Matthew loving her, there was no way Grace would give up Lucas for him. She wasn't the type to prioritize love above all else. Grace was selfish. She only ever loved herself. Mom, you have to think long-term. Lucas might be rich now, but he's going to go bankrupt. And Matthew, he'll keep climbing the ladder. One day, he'll be a branch director. Mom still sounded skeptical. Really? Of course. Do you think I'd pick Matthew if he were just some broke nobody? He may not look like much now, but he's actually really talented. His boss promoted him because of his outstanding project proposals. So that's how it was. But Grace only knew that Matthew would become very rich in the future, not realizing that everything Matthew had was given to him by me. The proposal she mentioned that got Matthew noticed, I was the one who wrote it for him. Otherwise, with his college credits barely completed, how could he possibly have the bright future Grace talked about? Mom, please help me take Matthew away. Otherwise, I'll be very unhappy in the future. Mom hesitated, but that person is going to marry Harper. Mom, you've forgotten what you told me when I was little, that I'm your only precious daughter. I stared blankly at the light on the top of my foot. Fine, alright. You did say that Matthew has always had you in his heart. We can only blame Harper for not having enough ability. I took a step back, and the light vanished from my foot. I was standing in complete darkness. So, in my mom's heart, Grace was her only precious daughter. But, honestly, didn't I already know that? Since I was little, my parents had always favored Grace. Other families had the older sibling let the younger one have what they wanted, but in our house, the most common thing my parents told me was, let Grace have it. The pretty dresses were for Grace to wear first. If she didn't like them anymore, then I could have them. All the snacks in the house were bought for Grace. I wasn't allowed to eat any. When I was little and stole some snacks because I was greedy, Grace slapped me across the face. I fell to the floor crying, but when Mom came in, Grace was already crying and complaining that I had stolen her snacks. Mom kicked me in the side, always trying to steal, even stealing snacks. Why don't you eat some rat poison and die? At that moment, I stopped crying, staring at Mom in disbelief. I couldn't believe my mom would curse me like that. I never understood why, with both of us being her children, there was such a difference in how she treated me and Grace. Later, I found out the truth. From the very beginning, I wasn't wanted. I was an accident. Mom didn't want me. Dad, fearing it was a boy, convinced Mom to keep me. They had a huge argument about it. In the end, it was Grace who said she wanted a little brother to keep her company, and that's when Mom agreed to keep me. But my birth disappointed everyone. I was a girl. Not the son Dad wanted, nor the little brother Grace had hoped for. That's why my name is Harper, extra. Though I always knew deep down that I wasn't loved, hearing it with my own ears still hurt. I used to find ways to comfort myself, but now I could only accept the fact that I was a child no one wanted. I heard footsteps and knew Mom was about to come out. I quickly wiped my tears and turned to hide in my room. Mom stopped in front of my room for a moment, then muttered quietly, "If I hadn't had Harper, wouldn't I have avoided all these problems?" Because of the wedding, I had taken a week off. Mom woke me up early to make breakfast with her. Young people don't need to sleep so much. Hurry up and wash the vegetables. But Grace was still asleep. The doorbell rang suddenly. It was Matthew and his parents. After hearing what Grace had said last night, whether or not Mom believed it, she was certainly treating Matthew much better. She thought they had come to see Grace, so she hurried to call for her. But instead, Matthew's mom said, "We're here to apologize to Harper." Harper? Mom looked awkwardly at Matthew. Grace had already come out of her room, and the two of them exchanged glances. Matthew's mom seemed to ignore Grace completely and walked over to grab my hand. "It's our fault. He doesn't understand. We've already talked to him. Look, can you forgive him this once, for the sake of all the years of relationship between us and Auntie? We'll hold another wedding. Your parents and I have already discussed it. We'll pay for a grander one for you." Actually, Matthew's parents never really liked me before. They thought I was too capable, better than Matthew in everything, and worried that he wouldn't be able to keep up with me after marriage. But now, when they had to choose between Grace and me, they didn't hesitate for a second to side with me. I looked at Matthew. He was exchanging flirtatious glances with Grace. They didn't know when they had stood together, and they were even holding hands in front of us. "Please don't make things difficult for me, and don't make things difficult for Matthew." Following my gaze, Matthew's parents immediately grew cold. Matthew tried to pull his hand back, but Grace held it firmly. She looked at me with a defiant expression. I couldn't help but laugh at Grace's foolishness. Sure enough, Matthew's mom slapped him across the face, furious. "Did you forget what you promised your dad and me last night? We humiliated ourselves to beg you, and this is what you do, embarrass us in front of everyone?" Grace, eager to show off, immediately tried to speak up for him. "You can't. Shut up, you shameless thing, seducing my son. You even seduced your own brother-in-law. What did your parents teach you?" Mom and Dad couldn't stand Grace being mistreated even a little. They rushed over to protect her. "What are you saying? Your son is the one without shame." While he was dating Harper, he was still thinking about our eldest daughter, Grace. The two families were in an uproar, Matthew's parents blaming everything on Grace. Mom and Dad turned it back on them. After they had yelled enough, Matthew's mom asked me, "Harper, I've always thought of you as my daughter-in-law. It hasn't been easy for you and Matthew to get to this point." I handed her a tissue. "Wipe your tears." Then I turned to Matthew and asked what had been on my mind. "You left a message from my sister saying you two were middle school classmates? But I clearly remember you telling me you went to a high school. Did you lie to me?" Matthew froze for a moment. Maybe he had imagined what I would ask him today. He had prepared answers for questions like whether he ever loved me or why he treated me this way. But he never expected I would ask a completely unrelated question. To him, this question was insignificant. But to me, it was very important. He stood frozen for a moment before nodding. "When you said you were from a high school, I lied to you. You also said you saved a drowning girl. Was that a lie too?" Matthew hesitated. "I did save someone. It was during the school's drowning drill." For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No wonder every time we talked about a high school, he would change the subject or say he forgot. It turned out, from the very beginning, I had been mistaken. He wasn't the Matthew I was looking for. Matthew and his parents had already left. After they left, Mom and Dad scolded them again. They still say we don't know how to raise a daughter. What about their son? Is he any better? When I grabbed my bag and was about to leave, Grace stopped me. Where are you going? I was in a rush to get out and had no patience left for her, so I frowned and retorted, does it concern you? Of course it does. Are you going to find Matthew? Do you have no shame? Grace saw me talk back and started throwing a tantrum. We truly love each other. Why do you have to get in the way and be the mistress? I was completely shocked. Let's not even talk about how I'm not interested in Matthew right now. Who exactly is the mistress here? Grace slapped me across the face, so fast I couldn't dodge it. The one who is unloved is the mistress. I knew that if I didn't act now, once the three of them got together, I'd have no chance to defend myself. I pushed Grace, and she fell onto the shoe rack. I rushed up and slapped her twice in return, then whispered in her ear, Matthew's mom was right. You're disgusting. Grace covered her face in disbelief, crying and shouting for Mom and Dad. Before they could come to her rescue, I had already opened the door and run out. In the elevator, I could still hear Mom's curses from outside, if you run away, don't come back. I shouldn't have had you in the first place. I shouldn't have had you. I'd heard that line since I was a kid. I had heard it countless times. The city has changed a lot over the past few years, and my parents have moved several times. They've gradually moved from one end of the city to the other. A high school is far from my house, and by the time I arrived, it was already noon. The security guard was having lunch when I asked him if I could go in. He looked up from his plate, gave me a nod, and then went back to eating. The school's honor wall had been updated with new names countless times, and many of the teachers who had taught me were now retired. After a bit of searching, I finally found an older teacher. Do you remember Matthew? So many years had passed, and all I had left in my memory was a vague shadow. I hesitated, then added, he was in the same year as me, or maybe a year older. The teacher smiled apologetically. There are so many new students every year, I really can't recall. Indeed, it had been so many years. I wandered around the school and couldn't find a single trace of the past. Forget it. If I couldn't find anything, so be it. As I walked out of the school, I accidentally bumped into a man carrying boxes from the bookstore. I apologized and helped him pick up the scattered old newspapers. These are old newspapers, can they still be sold? He chuckled. They can be sold. I noticed a stack of newspapers from 2015 and was drawn to the name Matthew on the front. He saw my gaze and leaned over to take a look, then said, this Matthew used to be a student at a high school, a really outstanding guy. I nodded, and suddenly a tear dropped onto the newspaper. Do you know him? I nodded but also shook my head. Did I really know him or not? When I graduated from elementary school, I got into a high school, but Grace, with her poor grades, had to go to B high school. Her dislike for me used to be small and childish. It was only after I started at a high that I truly felt her deep, visceral hatred. She really wanted me gone. The time she pushed me into the river, I begged her to save me. But she just watched me struggle in the water, like she was watching an ant squirm. It wasn't until someone noticed and jumped into the river to rescue me that she quickly ran away. The person who saved me was wearing an A high school uniform and looked to be around my age. Matthew. Before I passed out from choking on water, I heard his friend call him that. I woke up in the hospital days later, and my parents were eager to send me to my grandmother's house in the countryside. I figured they must have known it was Grace who pushed me. But they chose silence. Before getting on the train, I asked my mom, how's the person who saved me? I don't remember her exact expression, but I remember she said, he's fine, now hurry and get on the train. Looking back now, maybe she was feeling guilty. That's why she was in such a rush to get me out of the way. Later, I finished junior high and high school in the countryside. After the college entrance exams, I wanted to go back and thank my savior. But my parents wouldn't let me. They said, what would you go back for? The train fare is expensive. Wouldn't it be better to stay with Grandma? That summer, a lot of things happened, and Grandma passed away, so I had to put off my plan to find him. But on the first day of university, a senior, a complete stranger, told me his name was Matthew, and that he also graduated from a high school. He even mentioned that he had saved a little girl who had fallen into the water. Everything was just too coincidental. So, I naturally assumed he was the one who saved me. I did everything for him, took care of him when he was sick, even more than his own mother would. Everyone around him said I was a dutiful puppy always chasing after him, but I knew deep down I was just repaying his life-saving kindness. Eventually, even Matthew himself thought I liked him. Like a gentleman, he confessed to me, and so we naturally became a couple. At the time, I truly believed he was moved by me and had fallen in love during our time together. Until Grace told me she had reincarnated and showed me thousands of messages he had sent her. Only then did I understand there was no love growing over time. It was just that Grace didn't like him, so he settled for me. But if I'm honest, I couldn't even say I loved Matthew. Otherwise, I wouldn't have just walked out of our wedding. I knew he was weak-willed, lacking ability. Heck, even the proposal he used to get promoted at work was something I helped him create. Over the years, I had been helping him, making sure he left a strong impression with his bosses. It seemed the only reason I could tolerate being with him was that he was my lifesaver. So, when I learned that his heart still belonged to Grace, I felt completely justified in letting him go. I looked at the newspaper I had gotten from the uncle. The boy on the page was only 14, with a shy smile and slightly upturned lips. I thought to myself, he must have grown up to be an outstanding person. But unfortunately, to save me, little Matthew would forever remain 14. I read the praises for him over and over, the selfless little hero Matthew. I whispered, I'm sorry. It was Grace who pushed me that year, so it was her indirect action that led to little Matthew's death. And my parents, knowing everything, chose to send me to the countryside, covering up the crime. That night, I didn't go home, anyway, they wouldn't let me in if I did. I had just booked a hotel when Grace sent me a text. I opened it to find a picture. To be precise, it was a photo of Grace and Matthew in bed together. I glanced at it and then turned off my phone to start washing up. Seeing I didn't react, Grace called me directly. Stop wasting your time. Matthew will definitely marry me. I slowly spat out the water in my mouth before replying, then I wish you happiness. Honestly, I was quite grateful to her. If it weren't for her, I might have never realized I had misunderstood everything. But Grace thought I was being sarcastic. Stop pretending. In the past life, I didn't know anything, which is why you got to have him. This time, I'll take back everything that belongs to me. Grace still thought I was trying to steal Matthew from her, but I wasn't interested in him anymore. In fact, I was more interested in her. She said she had reincarnated. So I asked her, are you really reincarnated? Then what was my fate in my past life? In your past life, you took the position that originally belonged to me, the wife of Matthew, and stayed at home enjoying life. So, in this life, Matthew's wife can only be me. It became clear, if I had married Matthew, I would have ended up compromising in the end. His parents never liked how dominant I was, how I overshadowed him in everything. From Grace's words, I could guess the story of my past life. I would have quit my job, stayed home as a full-time wife, and helped Matthew with proposals, boosting his career, and eventually becoming the head of a branch office. But I was someone with ambition. I wanted to make a name for myself in a field I was good at, to stand at the top as a queen. Thank you. My sister. I truly appreciated her, but Grace thought I was mocking her. Even if you marry him, so what? In the past life, Matthew loved me until the end. So don't try any tricks. He never loved you, don't embarrass yourself by clinging to him. I didn't listen to another word she said. Standing in front of the hotel's floor-to-ceiling window, outside was the dazzling starlight, and my life, without marrying Matthew, would shine just as brightly. The next day, when I got home, I realized my parents had already changed the locks. I knocked on the door, and my dad shouted from the other side, "Didn't you run away? Then just die out there and don't come back." All right. I took out my old key from my bag and placed it by the door. After leaving, I rented an apartment near my office. Once I settled in, I called Matthew. I'll be stopping by tonight to get my stuff. I hadn't wanted to go, but since we used to share an apartment, some company documents were still in my old room. Matthew was home alone. When he saw me, he suddenly asked, "Where have you been these past 2 days?" "None of your business," I replied coolly. "Can I go get my things now?" Matthew was momentarily speechless, but still stepped aside. As I packed my things, he followed closely behind me. Harper, my parents still hope we'll get married. What do you think? His parents had gone to my parents' house that day. I thought my stance had already been made clear. So I ignored him and focused on packing. Seeing that I wasn't responding, he ran a frustrated hand through his hair. Can you stop being so difficult? Fine, I'm sorry, okay? He went on talking to himself for a while, but I didn't say a word. When I finished packing and was about to leave, I realized my bag was missing. I thought I had left it in the living room, but when I went to look for it, Matthew was holding a newspaper. What's this? He asked. I was carrying the same bag from yesterday and had forgotten to take the newspaper out. While I was packing, I had left my bag on the desk in my old room. I hadn't expected him to go through my stuff. I snatched the newspaper from him and frowned. Didn't your mother teach you not to touch other people's things? My attitude must have provoked him because he raised his voice and repeated, What the fuck is this? Nothing. I used to think you were him. Turns out I was mistaken. I turned to leave, but Matthew blocked the door. Mistaken? Then what am I to you, Harper? A stand-in? Did you ever even love me? It was strange, he had always been like this, emotionally unstable. I had tolerated it before, but now I just found him annoying. I looked him up and down, and to my surprise, I couldn't find a single redeeming quality. You got lucky that you share his name. Otherwise, do you really think I would have looked at you twice? Move. You're in my way. The photo Grace sent me of her in bed with someone else, I forwarded it to her ex-boyfriend, Lucas. She had it coming. When Lucas showed up at the house, I finally learned that she hadn't even broken up with him when she slept with Matthew. What I thought was just a petty love triangle turned into an all-out brawl when Lucas stormed in. Now, the entire neighborhood knew that Grace had been cheating, sleeping around with multiple men. Grace? Haven't I treated you well enough? I give you all that money every month, and you spend it on other men? Lucas tried to rush at her, but my dad blocked him. During the scuffle, Lucas hesitated to hit my dad since he was older, but my dad shoved him hard enough that he fell to the ground. Someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, "The cops are here." Grace glanced outside and then suddenly clung to my dad, collapsing onto the ground while crying out in pain. "Officer! He hit someone." She pointed at Lucas, playing the victim. My dad immediately cooperated, lying on the ground and groaning, 1 second complaining about his head, the next claiming his spine was broken. I chuckled but said nothing. Grace had pinned all her hopes on Matthew's future success. But right now, he was just a regular office worker and couldn't support her high-maintenance lifestyle, which Lucas had been funding. Now that everything was out in the open, she was trying to squeeze as much money out of him as she could. I glanced at the hallway, no security cameras. Lucas was screwed. I need to go to the hospital. Hurry, take me to the hospital. I'm dying. My mom ran out crying, wailing that Lucas had tried to kill my dad. The three of them put on quite the performance, and just as the police were about to take Lucas away, I spoke up. He didn't hurt anyone. I have the whole thing recorded. The three of them immediately fell silent. My mother was the first to recognize me. Harper? What are you doing here? We already cut ties with you. Grace didn't say a word, just stared at me. I simply walked through the crowd, smiling as I handed my phone to the officers. I wasn't helping Lucas because I cared, I just didn't want Grace to get her way. After clearing things up with the police, Lucas caught up to me as I was leaving. Thanks for that, he said. I smiled but didn't respond. Lucas continued, You're nothing like how your sister described you. Oh? And how did she describe me? He hesitated, then swallowed his words. I didn't need to ask, I already knew. Grace had probably trashed me plenty in front of him. I owe you a meal. Let me treat you. I declined, but he kept following me. He talked a lot, and I was getting annoyed. I stopped and stared at him. You really want to thank me? Lucas nodded firmly. I took out the newspaper. Can you help me find his family? Lucas glanced at the name on the paper and didn't ask any questions. Of course. I'll find them for you. He wasn't bluffing. With his connections, finding someone wouldn't be hard. In the end, Matthew's parents agreed to let him and Grace get married. At first, I had no intention of attending their engagement party. But Grace called me multiple times, flaunting her invitation. Sometimes, I just don't understand her. Inviting your fiancé's ex to your engagement party, what's going through her head? Even my parents called to scold me. Do you have no heart? She's your sister. Can't you just wish her well? In the background, I could hear Grace sobbing. Dad, does Harper hate me for taking Matthew? Is that why she won't come? So, on the day of their engagement, I showed up, just as she wanted. Matthew's face tensed when he saw me. You came. I smiled and nodded, then took my seat. From the moment I arrived, I could feel a burning gaze on me. Then, I heard Grace snap, Matthew, how long are you going to keep staring at her? The one getting engaged to you today is me. Her voice wasn't quiet, everyone around us heard. Matthew looked embarrassed and quickly hushed her. What are you talking about? Stop making a scene. Midway through the ceremony, my phone rang. The volume wasn't loud, but Matthew still heard it. His eyes darted toward me again. I picked up my phone and glanced toward the entrance. Wait for me. I'll be right out. Matthew followed my gaze and saw the man at the door. His expression instantly darkened. I walked to the entrance, turned back to look at Matthew, then left. In the car, Lucas glanced in the rearview mirror. He's following us. I shrugged. Let him. Just as I expected, Matthew never truly loved anyone. His so-called decade-long devotion to Grace wasn't love, it was an obsession, a fixation on something he never had. But once he got it, his dream girl became just another speck of dust on his sleeve, no longer worth cherishing. Just like how he had humiliated me on our wedding day, today, he abandoned Grace at their engagement party to chase after me. To men like him, the ones they can't have, the ones they've lost, will always seem the most precious. Lucas was fast, he had already found little Matthew's family for me. A middle-aged man opened the door. After listening to our explanation, he gave me a long, scrutinizing look. A woman's voice suddenly came from inside the house. Who is it? He turned back and replied, no one we know. They got the wrong house. Then he turned to me again and said, that's my wife. She hasn't been well since Matthew passed. We don't blame you. This was Matthew's choice. But don't come here again. Before leaving, I asked him for the location of Matthew's grave. He gave it to me without hesitation. But as soon as we arrived at the cemetery and stepped out of the car, someone lunged at Lucas and shoved him to the ground. I hurried forward and stepped between them, blocking Matthew before he could make another move. Are you out of your mind? Matthew let out a bitter laugh, anger twisting his features. Do you have no shame? Grace took him from me, and now you're with him? See? Some people's minds are so filthy, they see filth in everything. I turned around and told Lucas to wait in the car. Taking the bouquet he handed me, I walked into the cemetery alone. Matthew followed close behind. If you can accept Lucas, why can't you forgive me and give us another chance? Just a few hours ago, he was getting engaged to Grace. Now he had the audacity to ask me this? I ignored him and kept walking until I found the headstone with the name Matthew engraved on it. The moment Matthew saw the name, he reacted like a wild dog that had just had its tail stepped on, completely losing it. He snatched the flowers I had placed at the grave and flung them aside. What the fuck gives you the right to do this to me? Some people just don't understand words. So, I slapped Matthew across the face. Stop acting crazy in front of me. I had tried reasoning with him before, but it never seemed to get through. Now, with just one slap, he fell silent immediately. Turns out, some problems are better solved with action than words. He stood there, staring at me for a long time. I was wrong, Harper. Matthew glanced at the name on the tombstone, then pleaded with a voice so low it was almost pathetic. Forgive me. I'll forget about him too. He pointed at the grave. We can start over, can't we? I looked at him like he was trash and said coldly, no. All those years we spent together. Don't tell me you never loved me. You used to love me so much. There was even a trace of grievance in his voice. But what exactly did he think he had to be upset about? All those years we were together, and in the end, at our wedding, one word from Grace was all it took for you to throw it all away. Get lost. Don't disgust me. After that day at the cemetery, I didn't see Matthew for a long time. I only heard rumors. Grace was pregnant and demanding marriage, but this time, Matthew wasn't willing. Recently, my company had a collaboration with Lucas's firm. After wrapping up a meeting, we ran into Matthew outside. He looked awful, so gaunt he resembled a corpse that had just climbed out of its coffin, his face ashen and sickly. What bad luck. Lucas and I pretended not to see him and were about to leave when Matthew suddenly rushed toward us. He looked at me, then at Lucas. You too. Why are you together again? Lucas shoved him aside. None of your damn business. Just then, Grace appeared, having come to find Matthew. She hurried over and shielded him. Lucas, I told you we're over. Stop clinging to me. Lucas and I exchanged a look. We both thought they were insane. Grace was carrying shopping bags filled with baby supplies. I figured she and Matthew had been out shopping together. Let's go. Just as Lucas and I turned to leave, Matthew pushed Grace aside and latched onto me again. What a damn nuisance. Harper, let's start over, okay? Give me another chance. I'm begging you. Tears streamed down his sunken face, making him look downright pitiful. Grace threw down the bags and shrieked while trying to drag Matthew away from me. Now, not only was this unlucky, it was humiliating. She suddenly lunged at me, but before I could react, Lucas stepped in and stopped her. Grace, her slightly swollen belly showing, ranted like a lunatic in the middle of the street. Harper, you shameless homewrecker. You seduced my fiancé. You seduced your own brother-in-law, you whore. Her words were vile, completely deranged. I didn't understand, how did Grace, who used to be so vain and obsessed with appearances, become like this? I slapped her across the face. Seeing that she was still about to spew more filth, I slapped her again. Are you awake now? She wanted to fight back, but Lucas held her in place. All she could do was take the hits. I won't let you off, Harper, she shrieked. I raised an eyebrow. Still not awake? I slapped her again. And throughout the entire ordeal, Matthew never once defended her. After the meeting, I found dozens of missed calls on my phone. I checked, every single one was from my parents. No doubt they had heard about me hitting Grace and were calling to berate me. During the meeting, my boss had assigned me to an overseas project. I had already accepted. I wasn't planning on coming back, and I wouldn't have much to do with them in the future anyway. With that thought, I opened our family group chat. There were over 100 voice messages, all cursing me. The last 2 messages were from my parents. From now on, we'll consider you dead. If you can hit your sister today, you'll hit us tomorrow. We can't have a daughter like you. I chuckled, turned off my phone screen, and let it go dark. On the day of my departure, Lucas drove me to the airport himself. Halfway there, someone suddenly threw themselves in front of the car. It was Matthew. Thank God Lucas hit the brakes fast, otherwise, he'd be dead right now. Lucas got out, grabbed Matthew by the collar like a rag doll, and threw him onto the side of the road. If you want to die, don't drag me into it. But Matthew's eyes were fixed on me through the windshield. It was obvious, he had been waiting here for me. Get lost. Don't dirty my new car, Lucas snapped, shoving him aside. Matthew got up again and blocked the car. His intent was clear, he just wanted to see me. I glanced at the time. I didn't want to waste another second on him. I got out, walked over, and accidentally stepped on his fingers. I quickly stepped back. Say what you need to say, and then get out of my way. Matthew looked even worse than before, his voice hoarse. Please don't go. Don't leave me. You done? I asked impatiently. Then move. I turned to get back into the car, but Matthew suddenly ran toward the guardrail. Below it, the river surged violently. I'm begging you, don't go. I was wrong, I was really wrong. He was threatening me. If you leave with him, I'll jump. Idiot. I was so annoyed I almost laughed. Without hesitation, I took out my phone and called the police. When the cops arrived, I explained the situation and got back into the car. In the rearview mirror, I saw Matthew watching me leave, his eyes full of despair. Lucas glanced at the mirror and said coolly, "He really jumped." I looked away indifferently. "The cops are there. He won't die. Ignore him." As I was about to board the plane, Lucas called out to me. "If I pursued you, would you agree to be my girlfriend?" After spending time with him these past few days, I had to admit, Lucas wasn't the reckless, spoiled rich kid Grace had made him out to be. We had become good friends. But that was as far as it could go. Ever since I was a kid, I wore Grace's hand-me-downs. Even the snacks I ate were the ones she didn't want, given to me like charity. It's like I've spent my whole life picking up the things she discarded, like I was only ever meant to take what she didn't want. But now, I can finally break free from that. Do you understand? I believed Lucas would. Oh, right. I suddenly remembered Grace mentioning that his family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Keep an eye on your family's business. Be careful. My career abroad was going smoothly. The day I was promoted to general manager of the overseas branch, Lucas called me specifically to congratulate me. I laughed. "Last time you mentioned your family business was in trouble. How's that going? Did you manage to fix it?" Lucas hummed in acknowledgement. "Thanks to your warning, and thanks to you later introducing me to the right people to secure funding." As our conversation drew to a close, he suddenly asked, "Do you hate your family?" I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Instead, I simply replied, "I believe in karma. Good people will be rewarded, and bad people will go to hell." "I don't know if they'll end up in hell," Lucas said, "but your family is already living in one." He told me that Grace's belly was growing bigger, but Matthew still refused to marry her. He said he regretted everything and was waiting for me to come back. Grace wanted to give up the baby, but it was too far along, and she was afraid something might go wrong. So she had no choice but to keep it. You wouldn't believe it, she even came to me, asking to get back together. I wasn't surprised. After all, Lucas's family hadn't gone bankrupt like she had claimed. "So, did you agree? Are you kidding me? Do I look like that much of a fool?" In the end, Grace used the baby to force Matthew into marrying her. Imagine that, walking down the aisle with a huge belly. She's insane. As long as she wasn't embarrassed, I suppose that was all that mattered. Sometime later, Lucas contacted me again. "Matthew's dead. He died on his wedding day." I raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask for details. I didn't even bother to ask how he died. When Grace found out, she completely lost it, right there at the wedding. "Your dad was so furious, he ended up in the hospital. And your mom? She's searching for you everywhere. They must regret everything now. I never thought this day would come so soon." But when I heard the news, I didn't feel any satisfaction, no sense of revenge, no joy. It felt as distant as hearing about a stranger's tragedy. Calmly, I said, "I'll be going back soon." Lucas's voice changed with surprise. "You're actually going back to them?" "No. I quit my job. I'm starting my own business. Working for someone else isn't as good as being my own boss." He tried to persuade me. "You've built your network there. Wouldn't it be better to stay and start your business?" Beyond the floor-to-ceiling window, the steel jungle of the city stretched endlessly before me. I had carved out a place for myself in this urban empire. I'll still be based here. I'm just going back to take care of something. There was a brief silence on the other end. But when Lucas spoke again, I could still hear the disappointment in his voice. "All right." I chuckled, not thinking much of it. "END.